As you get older, you begin to think about the haunting of different experiences and that they change you forever. But what happens when we decide that we're going to pay attention to whatever that is rather than get away from it? A lot of counseling helps you get away from stuff. Mm-hmm. Maybe you don't want to get away from stuff. Maybe what you want to do is make sure you understand it has become a part of who you are, and you will be forever changed because of that. The V word, victim, never there. We're not a victim of anything. We have been made different.
So would you say you're trying to live your best life for those who no longer have the gift of life?
Yes. The longer we stay angry about stuff, we're just burning away our gift.
Welcome to the Vantage Point. I'm your host, Taylor Chapman. Jay Maloney, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you very much, Chappie. You're
a Vietnam veteran, a medic in Vietnam. You have a whole life and business following that. But kind of your niche subject or area of interest that we're going to focus on today is PTSD and this idea of moral injury. So I think it's going to be a heavy conversation, but a necessary one, and one that could probably bring those out there struggling with moral injury, with PTSD, just have experienced trauma. I think it could bring them some understanding, clarity, and even some closure.
No, thank you. I hope we can.
Yeah. So starting out, what does coming home haunted mean to you?
Well, that's the name of the project, Coming Home Haunted. Everybody all throughout our lives, some things that happen to us are things that, when I say stick with you, but they haunt you. For instance, driving along the road and there is somebody under a bridge, and you've seen people under bridges 1,000 times, but there was something about that haunts you, that person at that time. Can't quite put your finger on it. When we go off into a war environment, it's loaded with circumstances such as that. Usually, even though we're trained, technically trained, militarily trained, behaviorally trained, in a war, it's an environment in which some of those things happen, and they will haunt you till the day you die. And so coming home haunted is probably the better word than moral injury, in my opinion. And coming home haunted is also the cost of our service. Some of us come home, most of us come home without physical wounds, but some of us do. Most of us come home without psychiatric or mental health injuries, but some of us do. And the same is true with moral injury. Most of us do not, but some of us do. Mm-hmm. And so the idea of spending time with veterans on moral injury, which is distinctly different from PTSD, it has to do with the coming home haunted part of it. We'll talk more about that.
Yeah, we're going to dive deep into both of those. But just to kind of preface this conversation a little bit more, what do you think is wrong with, or even damaging, or even inaccurate about how modern society views and treats these symptoms, these so-called disorders?
I'm going to read something to you.
Please.
Hang on here. Let me find it. Funny you should ask.
Perfect.
These are some of the phrases that are used, some of the terms that are used in other civilizations.
Okay.
I have no idea how to pronounce this thing in Japanese or Zulu, so bear with me. I'll just give the English. So the Japanese, in Japan, they have a term when their warriors would come back, the samurai and other warriors, it was called a spiritual wound. Another variation was character wounds. I'll kind of rattle through these things, and there'll be a pattern that shows up here. And among the Zulu, death of the soul, spiritual distress. The Lakota Sioux, sacred wound, ethical pain, broken spirit. Starting to see a pattern here. In the Navajo culture, soul, affliction, leaders, sorrow, harmony disrupted. I'm almost done. Cherokee culture, goodness lost, righteousness broken, spiritual integrity shattered. Now, here in our civilization right now, we're beginning to refer to it. It's been given a name called moral injury. Now, moral injury as a term kind of was introduced by a man by the name of Jonathan Shea. Probably it was in the 1990s, so it's relatively new. PTSD is relatively new. You know, it used to be battle fatigue. You know, it had a lot of different names, but then it got medicalized. It became a term that was medicalized. Post-traumatic stress syndrome. Very PhD.
Right.
Very PhD. Our culture deals with these things through the nature of our culture, which is science and treatment and medicine. And we tend to medicalize a lot of things that maybe shouldn't be medicalized.
Absolutely.
And so one of the things, if you have PTSD, for those thousands of guys who are watching right now with some degree of PTSD, it's full of anxiety, fear, dread, things that can be managed through medicine so they can attenuate your affect. The thing is that everything that's been going on inside of you is still in there, only it's muted and it's been numbed. On the moral injury side, and again, that's also a fairly clinical term. It is the fraternal twin of PTSD. A lot of our affect, for those of us who have experienced moral injury, looks a lot like PTSD. Managing PTSD through medicine basically will change the way your behavior is. I'm going to ramble on a little bit, if I may. In the brain structures, the parts of your brain where PTSD is primarily located, it's the amygdala. You got one on either side of the brain, kind of, sort of from the ears going in pretty close to the center. It's not very big. Maybe each of them are about the size of maybe the tip of your thumb. And that's where you can almost say that's part of your lizard brain. That's where your freeze, fight, or flight instinct is. It's hardwired. When serious trauma, terror, near death, survival, the amygdala light up. And there's a lot of memory in there. Anything that is similar to it will light up, whether you want it to light up or not. It can get in the way of your life. And one of the ways PTSD gets in the way of your life is you're always aware of it. You're maybe you and I are talking right now. If you were going and if you're if you're kind of cranked up, your PTSD cranked up, you're going to pretend that you're listening to me, but you're not paying attention to a word.
Right.
You're looking over your shoulder. You're waiting for that smell. You're waiting for that sound. There's the joke of the fireworks goes off or a car backfires and the veteran jumps under the car. I mean, there's kind of a stereotype. People think that the veteran was startled. He wasn't startled. He was waiting for that all day.
Right.
All the time. And when it happens, he was just, he's not shocked. That gets in the way of your marriage. It gets in the way of your job. It gets in the way of your friendship. And people begin to think you're crazy because you're not paying attention to the conversations and you're acting odd.
Right.
So one way to manage that is they give you a pill. Moral injury, let's call it the cost of service. When that happens, the part of your brain is the prefrontal cortex. It's not your amygdala. The prefrontal cortex is where your higher functions are. It's where your executive functions are. It's where your sense of right and wrong exists. And then we go, aha. What is coming home haunted? It's a place where your right and wrong, your sense of right and wrong has been harmed. And may not really know what it is, but you're haunted by whatever that is. So that probably is maybe some of the differences about how our civilization treats these things. We treat it medically.
Yeah. Yeah, if I could just expand on that a little bit. I like what you said, how PTSD resides in the amygdala, which is our, I think the terms are coined in negative emotion processing, but I think new research is suggesting that it's involved in most of our emotional processing.
Yes.
But, it's very hyperactive during, very robust, very extreme situations. And in our case, war or a car accident or something where your fear response and your sympathetic nervous system had a very abnormally large spike in, our fear hormones, adrenaline, cortisol, et cetera. And it's almost like those spikes get scarred into our amygdala, into our nervous system. Right. And our body doesn't know how to re-regulate after that. It's kind of in a way, it's kind of this reprogrammed baseline of reality. Yep. Once you're in that situation and you see that horrific sight or you're part of that extreme situation, it's a new baseline for reality. So it definitely resides in our amygdala. And what you said about moral injury being more prefrontal cortex, that makes a lot of sense. Because like you said, our prefrontal cortex is our decision making, it's our impulse control, it's our executive functioning. So if at some point in our life, in this example in war, we've made decisions that later in life, maybe we've grown and evolved and developed a new set of morals. Now we've done things that are out of alignment with those morals. That's in our prefrontal cortex. Those are definitely two different things. And I want to highlight that they're two different things. How important is this? Because I feel like, modern medicine, like you're saying, kind of just bundles these all together. They give you a pill for this symptom. They give you a pill for the symptoms of that pill, and then another pill to fall asleep, and then another one to wake up. So how important is it to separate these two?
Let's say you were in a serious car wreck and nearly killed, and it was an event. You go off into a war, you live there. Those are really different things. And the experiences inside a war are experiences in a place that you have been living. A car accident is kind of outside of the scope of where you've been living. It's an anomalous event. When we go into a war, the standards change. Among the things that happen to us as soldiers is, number one, we're trained, in how to do things, how to not do things, when to do things, how to take an order. And we're sent off to do things that nobody in the normal world would ever want to do or be allowed to do. The reason why we do that is because we live in a good civilization that is worth protecting. And at some point, someone needs to go out and deal with the things that are out there that are dangerous. And in the process, we may have our PTSD experiences inside a place where we lived. The other is the moral injury, which is really, again, the cost of our service.
I just wonder how different, now that we've delineated the two, do treatments become salient? I think treatment for moral injury and treatment for PTSD, while understanding them can be helpful, but I think treatments to become healed. Well, now that I'm saying healed, do we heal from these?
Now, you're hitting it on the head.
Yeah.
This is good. This is good.
I know where you're going with this, but I don't think we heal from these. What do we do with it?
PTSD is a medically diagnosed problem.
Right.
And there's all sorts of evidence that it's not worthy of debate. It is what it is. It is a medical issue. So there's nothing wrong with a civilization that knows how to deal with things medically. Nothing wrong. But moral injury or the cost of service. Let me rewind this. The project Coming Home Haunted presumes that there will not be any treatment. It is not about treatment. You don't get better. But what it does is, where do you incorporate this into who you now are? It's not to be erased. It's not to be mitigated. It's to be dealt with directly, straightforward. in enough detail that you begin to understand it. There's an argument to be made, and I make that argument, which is that it's a spiritual injury. When we go off into a war, we are put into a spiritual environment, and I'm not talking about hugging a tree or looking at Pikes Peak. It's a spiritual environment in which you are forever changed at that level. So the idea of coming home haunted, the project, is to allow only veterans, the only people allowed in the room are veterans who perceive that they may have experienced moral injury. The V word, victim, never there. We're not a victim of anything. We have been made different. And we have been made different at a level which, just a little while ago about the different civilizations. Why the heck would they all come up with that?
Right.
They never met each other. They never went to a conference. They didn't read papers from each other, but they all did this.
Yeah.
So there's something that happens. And veterans, and again, I don't want to be snooty. Sometimes I think veterans, we can get a little snooty about, I'm a veteran, you're not. It's a veteran thing. And we need to be kind of careful about that.
Right.
But there are experiences at different levels that veterans can understand and hear. You can hear it.
Yeah.
And so that's maybe where the differences are as well.
Yeah. And we're going to get into this a little bit more, this PTSD, this moral injury, and how once properly reframed turns into, like, wisdom is the first word that comes to mind, but it's this new perspective that you can use and implement and help others and live a happy, fulfilling life.
Yes.
But at first, the first step, like you said, is to own it, understand you have it, it's not going anywhere, and do something proper with it. Before we go into that a little bit more, I would love to just kind of get personal with you and talk about your time as a medic in Vietnam, and just in sharing. So I'd love to talk about my service in Afghanistan as well.
Good. Well, let's see. It was, I was 20 years old when I got there. Most of our Army in those days was, we were transients for the most part. Some of us were 3-year guys, others were 2-year guys, but for the most part, we were cycled in and cycled out. Different than the professional military of today. I mean, you guys are really serious players. So it was at the 312th Evac up in Chulai, 312th Evacuation Hospital down in southern I Corps, about 60 miles outside of Da Nang, south of Da Nang. And most of my time was in the trauma unit. And the velocity, simply by the nature of that war, the velocity of wounded, could be rather high. And among those things about moral injury, and as you get older, you begin to think about the haunting of different experiences, and that they change you forever. In my experience, because I was young and I really wasn't prepared, I hadn't been prepared adequately for that kind of an experience. I ended up becoming dark, cynical, absent, I would say, of emotion by the time I got back. I could pretend. I knew when to smile. I mean, I remembered how to do all of that stuff. But then, so there was an injury that took place there. So this is 68, 69. That was a high volume year.
Yeah, it was.
And so the injuries were frequently what we call mines, IEDs, I guess that's what they are. People losing limbs, burns, things that were rather ghastly. And over time, because I wasn't really properly prepared psychologically, or I was young, it just did me in. There was a point where it just did me in. So, that's kind of, in a nutshell, my Vietnam experience.
Was there a moment in time as a medic in Vietnam that your perspective shifted, and maybe you didn't know it in the moment, but now later in life reflecting, this moment, working on this patient or being on this day in Vietnam, that was the moment that I gained this newly found clarity through the contrast of, what we call this, perfect life here in America?
It was the haunting, and that's, the phrase, I was haunted by some of those things years later. We talked the other day, you and I talked the other day about this one experience in which a boy had had his jaw shot off. And by say boy, he looked like he was 15 years old. If you had picked him up, he must have weighed 120 pounds. And I was, when you're a medic, sometimes if you're changing, unpacking or repacking or whatever, their face is like right here. Now, I didn't know what had happened to him until I unpacked, and his eyeballs were right there. And when I say boy, he was a little boy. I mean, he was just a child.
And he was an American soldier?
An American. He had no business being there. And I could read in his eyes an awareness that his life was forever damaged, forever. And it was an innocence. He had an innocence to him. Haunts me to this day.
And then you think about them today, he's still out there.
I don't know if he's alive. I don't know if he could have survived all of that.
Man. Well, thanks. I appreciate you sharing that. I think hearing other people share some of their, horror stories, whether it's in war or just in life in general, it helps put it into perspective. It helps people see their own stories from a different view. So how did you take that moment and how do you use it today and not use it to be a victim?
Yeah, these are good questions. It wasn't just one, it was a bunch. It was corrosive. It was iterative, layer after layer after layer of becoming darker and more wounded, more wounded. When I got back, it was 1969, and Vietnam was still rather unpopular. Today, I put on my Vietnam veteran hat, and everyone goes, "Thank you for your service." I mean, it's really very nice.
I hope it stays that way.
Really. But what I began to realize is that I became cynical. I became dark. I saw nothing good in the world, and I used the analogy. I had a monkey. And all of that was my pet monkey. And as long as I could have my pet monkey with me, being angry, all of that stuff. And then one day over time, I realized I needed to let the damn monkey go. And because of those particular casualties that I had some intimacy with, because in the emergency room, you don't always know where anyone goes once they leave the ER. They go somewhere. And so I don't know where they went. And a lot of them were dead. There were a lot of people I know who died. And it hit me, or it evolved in me, I guess, that every day that I'm angry is a day I'm wasting I'm wasting my gift, which is I'm not dead. I have Christmases. I have spaghetti dinners. I have migraine headaches. I have all sorts of things that make me miserable, but I'm alive. And every one of them lost all of that. And so when you think about what do I want to do with that? And the thing is, I need to change how I conduct myself, and I need to change how I see things. And that's something you have to think about. It's not how I felt. And so, looking back on things, Vietnam was a gift. It allowed me to live whatever days I have with a fair amount of gratitude.
So would you say you're trying to live your best life for those who no longer have the gift of life?
Yes. And there's small things that you can do. You're probably aware of, you go to bed early because you can. Stay in the shower, stay clean, have another cup of coffee, really small things, because you know what it's like to not be able to sleep. You know what it's like to be dirty a lot, deep dirty. You know when you're exhausted and all you want to do is lie down on a nice, comfortable rock. don't lose those times, like the longer we stay angry about stuff, we're just burning away our gift. So slightly different subject.
Yeah. No, it's a relevant subject though. I would love to share a story because I'm just kind of sit here if I had a moment like this, and I think I did. We mentioned the other day, I was a medic, a special forces medic. Before that, I was EOD. But during my time as EOD, despite having deployed to Afghanistan, I really didn't see a whole lot of horror or gruesome things that you would imagine. And it wasn't until I became a medic and did an internship at a hospital. As part of our training, we do a month in a trauma hospital to get our hands dirty for the first time. And
to get blooded.
Essentially. And it's to see if you can handle it more or less. So I did my time at Tampa General Hospital down in Florida. And just a day or two into this, I was in the trauma bay. It was a work day around 9:30, 10 in the morning when most people are at work, pushing papers, doing whatever. And we had this mass casualty call come in.
Yeah.
And it caught the whole trauma bay off guard because you can kind of ride the waves of a trauma bay. Friday nights, Saturday nights are going to be greater than a Tuesday morning.
The knife and gun club.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. We have a lot of those stories. But on this morning, there was, I don't remember if it was 3 or 4 gentlemen getting rushed in. And the only information we had was that there was an explosion at this factory and that we had some burn victims coming in. And we didn't know the severity of the burns. Yeah. We didn't know anything. And the trauma bay was completely empty. And Tampa General Hospital, they have 12, 14, maybe 16 trauma beds in there. Like they're ready for something large to happen. There was no one. It was just a big empty space with a bunch of beds ready to go. And so we're all prepping. We all get to our tables, patient 1's going here, 2 there, 3 there, 4 there. Each nurse at a station, doctor here. And I was working with this one nurse. I remember her very vividly, and this one doc who was on this table. And we were very nonchalant. We were very casual, like a little bit of a burn. Like we didn't know what was coming in. Yeah. When these paramedics started bringing these patients in, it was one after another, 1, 2, 3, 4. The smell, the sight, the chaos of the paramedics coming in, we knew how serious it was going to be. And, a burn patient, we were kind of just going down a trauma sequence. You just still want to be careful, check for blood, check for hemorrhaging, kind of go down the life-threatening sequence. Airway, which was an issue with the burn patients. And my job at this table was to just strip them of their clothing. We wanted to expose everything. You understand that as a medic. We wanted to expose everything, see what the most life-threatening situation was, and treat that. So I'm cutting off his clothes. I get down to his boots, and it wasn't until I cut off his boots. I remember they were brown over the ankle Timberland boots, charred. And when I cut them off, I was able to see that his skin represented that of an African American. And I had no idea what nationality he was up until that point, because it was just burned tissue from head to ankle. And then below that, his boots had saved his skin. Yeah. And that moment right there, walking around that table, seeing this gentleman, he had an airway in, he was completely covered in, we were covering him in gauze. That was the moment for me. Yeah. And while I'm working on this guy, I'm thinking that he, like we'd mentioned about your guy in Vietnam, he was permanently changed. Yeah. And I'm here in the moment right now helping him. Right. And that was the moment. That was the moment for me. And I had many moments after that during my month in that hospital. And then as a special forces medic, I have many stories like this. But reflecting now at 33, I got out 2 years ago and had, hundreds of these stories. Yeah. And I had the mask on, like you said. After that moment, my mask got put on. I didn't put it on. I had to put it on. Yeah,
right. It shows up.
Yeah. I learned. Go ahead.
The other day, when we were talking, and you can edit this thing if you wish, because, there was another story that you told, which is the essence of moral injury. And it had to do on towards the very, very end, when you were briefing people who had worked with you and your unit. I assume that they were contract. Mm-hmm. They were true warriors. They were, as they would say in the vernacular, they were not men you ever want to fuck with. And you had to break you had to break certain news to them.
Yeah. So
are you okay with?
Absolutely. In 2021, I was in 10th Special Forces Group, and we were in Afghanistan for the close down. And a small portion of my job while I was there was separating Afghans who were working with us and had been working with Americans for many years, separating them from our support and letting them off into, Afghanistan on their own, without our protection, without our support, without anything. And I sat there just like I am today. And up until this point, some of them 10, 15, 20 years had been working with American Special Forces, battle hardened, scars all around, missing fingers, missing parts of their body. And they were for the cause. They wanted to see Afghanistan turn around. And when we separated, a lot of them had a very difficult time. And I felt as if I shouldn't have been the person to do that, because I didn't go on missions with them. I was just there at the end to kind of clean up the dirty work and do this very difficult job, which was telling these people that it's time. And it was, I think about that burn patient. I think about, disarming IEDs in Afghanistan as EOD. I think about everything else I did in the military. Sitting down with those warriors was the hardest thing I've ever done, because I could see the years of service in their eyes. I could see the distraught and the fear, knowing that this was the last time they were going to leave this base, because we're taking their badges, we're taking everything they had to protect themselves, and we were just letting them go into Afghanistan. And
we were letting them know they were doomed
or dead.
Yeah, that they were doomed.
Yeah,
and little moral injury stuff here. When we go into when we soldiers, whatever it might be, and sometimes it needn't be the severity or the intensity of the things you and I are talking about. Moral injury can hit anybody who's in that environment. So we're not doing, I'll show you mine if you show me yours. This is not at that level. Mm-hmm. But when we do things, we are sent to do, as I said, some of us come back physically harmed, some of us psychologically, some of us come back spiritually injured. Not everybody, but some are. When we go off to serve our nation, we are prepared to do all of those things. We are prepared to come back dead. But what you had done there, you had no voice in the decision to disengage from Afghanistan. Mm-hmm. You had no choice. You had no voice in getting there in the first place. You had no voice in what the mission was, but you were there and you did your service. And what you were asked to do on that day was to tell people something that was so It was so contrary to all of the things we had allowed them to believe.
Yes.
They trusted us. They put their lives at stake, and they put their families' lives at stake, and they trusted us. And what you were saying is we have violated that trust. And everything that you had been afraid of, that we convinced you to join us because you would be safe, we lied to you. That's moral injury. Mm-hmm. And it will be something that will haunt you forever. When we go into the military, I don't know anybody who's gone into the military who, when they put their arm up or their hand up and took the oath, that they didn't mean it. They meant it. And all of the training and things that you go through, they're brutal and they're hard, but you stay with it. And when we go off to war, we know the injuries that might happen to us. But the cost of our service is neither good nor bad. It just is what it is. But there's an injury that you suffer, a moral injury of having to talk to those men knowing full well that they had been abandoned. And it was your voice telling them that.
I had to abandon them, but I wasn't the one talking. But I was.
Yeah.
And that's what hurts.
Yeah.
I felt like a puppet to, I mean, whoever was making this decision, we can get into the politics
That's
behind
not the
it.
politics, but the thing is, someone else did it. The people you trusted to do the right thing, because you commit yourself. You committed yourself, and you became a true accomplished warrior. And I don't want to embarrass you with that, but anybody who becomes a Green Beret didn't get there by accident and without having suffered. And that was a commitment to your nation. It was a commitment to your brothers. And when you got there, you were making commitments to those people who were aligning themselves with you. And it got violated. Moral injury.
Yeah. And I'm not alone. I was there with many of my brothers. There was a lot of us there during that time in 2021. A lot of civilian contractors who were there that disagreed with what was going on. There was a lot of people there trying to help those that we were going to leave behind. And we were discouraged, even threatened for doing so. Because, there's a lot of people trying to go there in 2021 to rescue people that had worked with them earlier in the
I know.
in the war.
I know a bunch of people who worked and they had a real hard time making it work. They were trying to get dogs back.
Man, I met so many good dogs over there.
But the contract dogs, which was different than the Department of Defense dogs. Department of Defense dogs come back, but the contract dogs are still the same dog doing the same thing. And they couldn't come home because they didn't have the right number on their head. And people who have worked with dogs in those environments, you can love them maybe more deeply than you might with a human being. And the idea that they were abandoned in an airport, it can drive some people crazy. But now we're talking about coming home haunted. Now we're there. And the thing about veterans who come home haunted don't have the time to talk about that. Or the circumstances to talk about it. And if you do talk about it, probably the only people you can and should. And I don't want to be snotty or snooty about the thing. It's a brother. It's a brother. And the deal in the project, the Coming Home Haunted project, is we really need to listen. And we don't need to comfort. There's no comfort hugs here, but it has to do with respect for the story and respect for the storyteller. And when your turn comes, tell your story. And once you begin to do that, now you can begin to bring that into who you are for good, rather than being haunted. And you can begin to aspire. We talked about the idea of becoming a just man, which is more than being a nice guy.
I would like to take a brief moment to thank one of our sponsors, USAA. USAA is celebrating over 100 years of service to our military community. It all started in 1922 when a group of soldiers insured each other's vehicles when no one else would. With USAA's launch of Face the Fight Coalition to counter veteran suicide, we're elated to have them as a sponsor of the Vantage Point. If you're a veteran, active duty, or a family member of someone who has served, check out USAA.com to see how they can help you today.
Well, let's talk about it, because we both just shared our story, and I would love to kind of just go back and forth in the same manner as to how we've taken those stories and become, or at least tried to, because it's kind of a never-ending journey, to become a more just man. Me personally, I've seen people at their worst, on the verge of death, even dead. I've seen cities destroyed by war and bombings and corruption. I've seen everything in between. And once you see, a human at their worst, having a body, a functioning body, becomes a blessing. After seeing a city that's fallen to war or corruption, poverty in these third world countries that we've seen, living here in Colorado becomes a blessing. It becomes like every day is a gift. And then we kind of mentioned that at the beginning, and it's taken me a while, and I still don't have this mastered by any means. There's plenty of days I wake up angry and upset and sad and want to cry, frankly.
I get it.
And I try really hard to think about those burn victims or those cities in Afghanistan or in Ukraine that I was in, and just be grateful for what we have here and the functioning body that I possess, and turn that into something that can help other people. Because I know not everybody is going to gain this clarity, this perspective through extreme adversity like we have. But like you said, without being snooty, I think we can help people see that without having to go through the suffering that we have. And I really think as veterans, that is what makes us valuable, and valuable to society, valuable to civilians, valuable to anybody who, hasn't lived a life of suffering or adversity like that. So how have you kind of restructured this into becoming a more just individual?
Some of the premise about the Coming Home Haunted project is veterans only. We don't let clinicians in the door unless you happen to be a veteran. But that's not why you're there. And in some controversial ways, it's only men. It's only males. Other times, other places, for other people, but that's what we're doing here. And part of that has to do with how we men apprehend the world and apprehend ourselves. The Coming Home Haunted project is not about how we feel. Feelings happen in it. That's not what the point is. The point is our rational, thoughtful selves. We go through a bit of a kind of a process. It's a half-day thing. It's not like a 19-day, let's go fishing kind of a thing. We start out with that litany of different civilizations, and we spend time talking about that. For instance, why would they do that? Why does that happen? What is it about the human spirit or the human soul that causes civilizations, even if they don't know how to do pills, understand that? So we talk about that. One of the things we talk about, and we call it the sliding scale. In Western civilization is a kind of a composite of two major civilizations. One is the Judeo-Christian civilization and its moral structure, and then the other one we can call it Greco-Roman, just to kind of keep it nice and simple. And the idea of Western civilization, if you want to understand what it is, visualize Western civilization as the bridge between Jerusalem and Athens. Without those two things, there's no Western civilization. And so where is your moral injury? On the Judeo-Christian side, which has to do with pretty clear theology about there are some things that are, we're informed by God to do certain things and to not do certain things, and it's not for us to ask why. It's for us to surrender to that morality. On the Greco-Roman side of things, it has to do with virtue, with honor, with honoring your civilization, with advancing or protecting your civilization and protecting your brothers. So where on the sliding scale did whatever happened to you happen to you? Get a beat on that first so you know what the heck you're talking about. Maybe it's 50-50, doesn't matter to me, and I don't care. So we talk about that for a while until we can begin to understand. And again, we're talking about men right now. Men function real well when we talk about things like that. I don't really care how you feel. Then we have there's a particular essay that we're obliged to read and talk about, and some elements in it. We just don't kind of say, let's read it. There's some things in there we talk about. What we also then do is we will, after a fair amount of that, a break for about an hour in which we don't talk to each other. We go off to a corner somewhere, or whatever it might be, with a journal, and we think about whatever this is relative to why we showed up here that day. And from there, and writing is also a part of it. When we get back together, if you don't want to talk about that, it's no one's business. But then we begin to talk about the idea of the just man. And the point about the just man is, how do we integrate all of the stuff that brought us here this afternoon into who we really are and who we've always been? And it doesn't matter how we feel. How do we integrate that into how we understand who we are and who we've become? and live our lives more carefully. So that's so at the end of that, the thing is, well, now what do I do? Well, one thing you can do, if you think counseling is what you need, that's up to you. There are some places and people who will be very good in working things through with you. And on the other hand, maybe what you need to do is talk to a priest or a pastor. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter. Own what has happened to you. And do your best to become a better man. Mm. It's hard to do in a half a day, but that's kind of the idea, which is talk to adult men like they're adult men.
Mm. It's a start, though. Sometimes you only need a half a day, and especially to be in a crowd of other men that are starting, It gets the ball rolling. This makes me think of some Greek philosophy, Socrates specifically. Yeah. He always said that a life unexamined is a life not worth living.
Correct.
He also referenced himself as a gadfly of Athens. Are you familiar with this analogy?
Yeah.
So, when he was being tried, he wrote his apology to the court, and he references himself as a gadfly to Athens. And what a gadfly is essentially a pest that stings an animal, and then the animal gets up. What was that? Maybe the animal was sluggish or lazy or dying or whatever it was, and then it gets stung by this gadfly. The sting hurts, but it was the sting that got them moving in the first place. Yeah. So in your project, it might only be a couple hours, and it might only be a short period of time, and it may even be painful because you're talking about things you've never talked about, but it could be just that short sting, that short half a day that gets someone moving in the right direction. So
if they wish. If you want to go home, if all you want to do at the end of that afternoon is go home and watch TV, none of my business. Mm-hmm. But on the other hand, I truly believe this, once you begin, especially around brothers, to reveal at a fairly deep level where the cost of your service resides in you. And regarding stories, it's really important about the nature of the story that you tell. It does need to end well, not happy, but it really needs a point. Mm-hmm. But once you've done that, I don't know how you stop.
Yeah. You referenced this essay, and if I could quote it real quick, because this was written exceptionally well, and it puts it into perspective, because I think what PTSD is gets lost. Right. I think a lot of times people think PTSD is, I was in a firefight, or I saw someone blown up, or whatever it is. I think the DSM-5 explains it as, witnessing or experiencing extreme injury or near-death situations or sexual violence, are like the three, confounding factors there. But your quote here says, what troubles many veterans is not simply whether they violated rules or laws, but the deeper reckoning that follows having confronted the intolerable, bearing witness to what lies beneath the thin veneer of civilization, and to one's own capacity to endure, participate in, or survive it. I think that is so well written, because it doesn't exactly say you have to be around a life or death situation or see this or see that. It's experiencing the other side of the coin. A lot of us here in America have never seen anything extreme like that. And once you see that other side of the coin, that thin veneer that holds civilization together, that is something different than PTSD, different than moral injury. It's kind of a gray area in between. It is. It's coming home haunted. Yeah.
It's coming home haunted. That kind of language is very thoughtful. And it's respectful to the people, to the men in the room. Mm-hmm. We've gotten to the point, not you and I, but where we don't talk to each other with that kind of depth until we do. And anyone who has, people understand that, even though we don't get to use that kind of language around one another. When we speak to each other in that way, it elevates us. It informs us to go to a different altitude. Mm-hmm. And people do, and that's where we begin, I think, to begin to integrate our cost of service, because you got to get to that altitude. Mm-hmm. Our civilization doesn't feel real comfortable at that altitude, but I'm glad you picked that quote.
Yeah, I love it. I would love to share this essay. If I could put it in the description of this video, I would love to. Yeah. There's another analogy I would love to have you expand on, where you discuss suffering being this kind of soil, and, you know, the seeds that lay in that soil could be different experiences you've had, and choosing what to do with those seeds makes all the difference. Would you mind expanding on that one a little bit?
And it all depends on how you want to look at it. And that's the thing we're talking to men here about. How do you choose to look at this stuff? It's your call. But here's some ways you might want to look at it. If you look at suffering as a rich soil, a place where your life has been enriched, not necessarily made happier, but you have been enriched because of that particular suffering. The moral injury or the cost of your service, you can deal with the soil thing in one of two ways. One, you can treat it like it's a stone, bury it, walk away. The other, you can plant it like it's a seed and wait for it to begin to inform you and grow and to understand it. In other words, don't walk away from this thing. It's a point of view. It's all that it is a point of view. It's a nice image. But what happens when we decide that we're going to pay attention to whatever that is rather than get away from it? A lot of counseling helps you get away from stuff. Mm-hmm. Maybe you don't want to get away from stuff. Maybe you don't want to get better. Maybe what you want to do is make sure you understand it has become a part of who you are, and you will be forever changed because of that. And that's where the gift piece comes in. Now you can begin to choose what you're going to do with that. You can be angry. You can be victim. Our culture is full of victim. Or you can try to become a just man on how you understand other people. And you've seen evil. That's the other thing. You've seen evil. And you'll recognize it again. A just man does not live well near evil. You got to do something about that. Mm-hmm. And you may lose some friends. You know, you may pay a price. But you become a just man. And as you get older and you're getting ready to die, you can say, I lived the life of a just man. I could have never done that had I not had those experiences. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of what it's about.
Man, there's this idea in philosophy about what is good and what is bad. And, you know, that's like the ancient old question, right? But I think good is the ever-ending pursuit or the never-ending pursuit of knowledge. You know, if you choose to constantly pursue the more thought, more discussion, more evidence, more knowledge, that is good. And I think evil is ignorance or portraying knowledge or ideas that you may not know. Yep. And I think we're seeing that a lot right now in civilization. I think the pursuit of knowledge is becoming a pastime, but it sounds like in your project, that's the root of it. It's pursuing more knowledge, or at least gaining a new perspective on knowledge you already have. And I mentioned this because you said once you see evil, you know what evil looks like. Yeah. And, you know, we've been to countries where they're not open to different ideas. They're set in their ways. They're not open to new knowledge. They're not open to new perspectives. And in that ignorance, I think, lies evil. So you have any perspective on this idea?
Yeah, you know, this is kind of a fun conversation.
Yeah, I'm in a philosophy class right now, so I have a little bit kind of fresh under my belt.
That's the essence of becoming an educated person. Is, you know, you can figure out what to do later on to earn a living. You got to do that, but man, what is the purpose of any of this stuff? And be careful, be real careful, you know, in it. But so. Three things. This is almost like something I want to have on my grave. Okay. One, and we'll have to talk about these things. To thine own self be true. The truth shall set you free. Seek and ye shall find. This has been going on. I mean, those are phrases from a long time ago. So to thine own self be true. It doesn't mean always be nice to yourself and kind of be spoiled. Don't lie to yourself. Never lie to yourself. The idea of becoming a more just man, integrating the experiences that have conceivably broken your heart, that's evidence of telling the truth to yourself. To thine own self be true. The truth shall set you free, which is be very careful what you choose to believe and what you choose to understand. Don't be cynical, but be skeptical. Speak with people and talk with people and allow them into into your life if you consider them to be honorable, Greco-Roman. And seek and ye shall find, which is seek and ye shall find. And in many ways, those are things I thought, God, they'd actually fit. One's from Shakespeare, the others, are, Paul and Matthew, but you go, geez, these people lived a really long time ago. And, they thought about this way the hell before my great-great-great-great-grandparents were born. But those are the kinds of things that in a conversation such as this, and that's what the coming home haunted thing is about, is enough time to have a conversation at this level where at the end of the day, you go, I can't stop thinking about this now. And there's no pill for that,
right,
which is the good part.
Well, on that, there's pills to avoid that. And that's what they try and feed us when we have these injuries or these disorders. But I like the last one, think and you shall find.
Seek. To thine own self be true. Don't lie to yourself,
right?
Which is easy to do, lying to yourself. The truth shall set you free. Seek and you shall find. Works pretty damn well. There may be a better way to put it, but go that actually, those things work. And when you're talking about the pills, they pill the amygdala. They end up pilling the prefrontal cortex while they're at it, and that's the last place you ought to be pilling. That's where all of the work needs to be done. That is the attentive man. The just man is always careful about what he thinks and what he does.
Yeah.
And I don't think we're treating our men respectfully enough in our culture right now.
Yeah.
I don't think men are treated with adequate respect.
Yeah. Yeah. I would love to have a psychiatrist on the show to talk about the flaws in current pharmacology around these things. But I want to finish this thought here. The first one and the last one, and the middle one, truth will set you free. The first one was don't lie to yourself. And the third one being seek and you shall find.
Right.
So the first one, don't lie to yourself. The third one, seek and you shall find. So to go down this route, especially the third one, seek and you shall find, one has to admit that there is more to seek.
Yes.
I feel like right now in this world of abundance, we have freaking artificial intelligence in our pockets that can tell us the answer to anything, anywhere in the world. We think we know everything. And I think the more we think we know everything and the more devices and systems that are put in place to create this really deeply rooted illusion that we know everything, we're understanding less.
The shadows on the wall.
Right.
Right.
And so especially in modern day, despite all this technology, despite all of these decision-making tools we have, there's more reason than ever to seek, to find the truth.
Yep.
And you need to stop lying to yourself and that you think you know everything and that there's nothing else to know. So I think to go down this route that you're saying, there has to be a sense of humility, this kind of release of ego. There's always going to be something new to learn. There's always going to be more information that I don't have. And you need to let that cockiness kind of attitude go in order to go down that route. And I feel like once you can do that, kind of release the ego and fall in love with discovery and seeking, that's where healing comes. That's where happiness lies, in my opinion.
Yep. The thing about seek and you shall find, we're also lazy. It's very easy to pick up other people's values, and if they're good values, let's not become teenagers, But there's a time and a place where we need to not only be skeptical, and not necessarily take whatever other people's values are, but take the time and the energy to formulate them based on something. Now we're into the Judeo-Christian side of thing again. We're going back to that one, which is that there really was either you believe that there is objective truth and surrender to it. And those are conversations we need to have, certainly, among ourselves, but also, with, learned not theologians, that's too academic, but, a minister. Have a conversation about, you can say, when I was in the war, I did everything I had to do. I did it for the right reasons, but I never thought about that. I'm old enough now that I'm going to have to come to an understanding of who and what I was. This is one perspective which I do believe in. I need to understand my relationship with God. I am not that important. And I need to not become, a thumper, but on the other hand, I need to become learned about this. It's a gift. I mean, moral injury, this is a good conversation we're having right now. More veterans would love to do this thing. They'd love to, there's a whole lot of people right there who would like to be in the room with us right now and have this conversation.
Yeah.
And, because there's a hunger for it.
Yeah.
And men get it, and this isn't about, we don't need comfort, we don't need anyone to be empathized, anyway.
I think we need someone to justify our feelings, not, hide them or not tell you that everything's going to be okay. Like you said, I think it's totally okay to tell someone what they've been through is life-changing and that your feelings are real and that they're probably not going to go away. So I think having that honest, transparent buddy or group of buddies that can do that for you is absolutely salient in this healing process.
I don't need atonement.
Right.
I don't need atonement. I don't need to be affirmed. But I want to have someone hear me. And this is the opportunity. I haven't talked, that's the other thing. I haven't had the opportunity to talk about this, maybe ever. And the other thing that we do is we write. Because when you write something down, that literally in longhand, you're imprinting certain things that you may never have done. And the importance of imprinting your thinking, because then you read it and you go, "What? That's not quite right." That needs to be fixed.
Yeah.
I didn't say that well.
Yeah.
And then over time you begin to craft your understanding, and we don't get to do that. We're way too distracted.
Yeah.
We're way too distracted.
Tell me a little bit more about writing. Over coffee the other morning, you recommended that I write more because I write. I don't write consistently. I have written consistently since we spoke. And it's something I definitely want to start incorporating into my life. But what does that look like, and what are the benefits of it?
Well, I don't mean to. I don't mean to compliment you, but it's going to come out that way. You're a good writer, and some people are, and some people aren't. You either get it or you don't get it. But when we talk, you and I are using our fluid memory right now. We're just telling stories that have been floating around in there, and we're putting them together pretty quick, pretty well. But when we write something, we use long-term memory. We imprint it, and if we use longhand, which is not this, but longhand, it's even more vivid and more permanent. So the act of writing. And it can be written as literature. I mean, there's great stories that you could say. You could build great stories about your experiences. Not adventure stories. But you could do that. You could also do an analytic about yourself. How do I choose to understand this thing? The other one, I could do it as a narrative. You could do it as a narrative. It doesn't matter. But once it's out, you're going to have to fix it. You're going to have to rewrite that thing. You go, I'm close on that. It's not right. And there was that audio essay. I don't know if you got to hear the audio essay. I wrote that originally in 1989. I think I must have written it 400 times.
Wow.
before, and it wasn't like to get it right. It's that story needs to. I'm not saying that right. It didn't matter who was reading it. It didn't matter. But over time, when you do that, there's a clarity where you go, I got it. This is more than adequate, and the act of writing, and again, it's time. We don't have the time. Well, we do have all the damn time in the world. We just can't make that time. But the writing part of it is how you will come to understand what the heck is going on in your head. Mm-hmm. And without going into too much of a ramble, what's in your heart. Not so much your feelings, that's your endocrine system, mm-hmm. but what's in your soul. Mm-hmm. And writing will set you free, one of those things.
I want to start kind of bringing this conversation to a close, but I want to enunciate a point here because I think I just had a little bit of an epiphany. We talked about PTSD. PTSD affects the amygdala. It's our fear response. It's this extreme exposure to large spike in adrenaline or cortisol. It's this life or death situation. Yes. But PTSD allows us to see life differently. As we discussed this entire conversation, it's a gift. And moral injury has a lot to do with, decisions that were made or decisions we had to make or decisions that were made for us that we didn't agree with later in life, which brings clarity to the decisions we make in the future. Because we had made decisions that hurt or caused harm or stirred the pot, right? Because we've been in situations that caused extreme amounts of fear, PTSD, moral injury, we now have this sense of clarity, this newly gained perspective that most never have the opportunity of seeing.
Right. That's the gift.
And this is not a disorder. I'm describing something beneficial. This is a lens.
Yes.
It might be a heavy fucking lens, but it's a lens nonetheless that most don't have the honor of carrying. So I think just reframing these disorders that they're throwing pills at us for, these are blessings. These are gifts. These are lenses that you can't buy at the store that give you a sense of clarity that most never see in their entire life. So if I could leave just one message, and maybe you have a take on this, it's don't view your PTSD or your moral injury as a disorder. Maybe stop numbing it with medications, maybe embrace it, talk to some people who also have it, have a conversation like this and come out on the other side with this lens to see life like no one else can. You've seen the other side of the coin, how ugly it can be, how easily a body can be, or a life can be taken. Be grateful for what you have. Be grateful for those gifts.
Adding on top of that, it was really expensive. Mm-hmm. Really expensive. To have been driven into darkness in which you see things like people have been who have been so severely burned, they're doomed, they're dying. An hour ago, they were just normal. And you're witnessing something that is heartbreaking because they know. Or you had to break word to people who trusted you on behalf of a government that made you trust them or made them trust you. And that government violated that. It's not Republican or Democrat. I'm not going there. Mm-hmm. Those are really expensive things. They're precious. I mean, they really are precious. And it all depends on how you want to look at it, because we're all fucked up.
Yeah. Yeah, I think learning from those moments just right here live in this conversation, trust is something so valuable. I don't ever want to break trust with anybody. I want to speak the truth.
That is the just man talking right there. Yeah. That is the just man. And we don't become a just man by making up our mind. It's iterative. It's a little bit every day, and you can go to bed at night going, screwed things up a lot today, but there were a few times today when I was doing the right damn thing for the right damn reason. Mm-hmm. And I can live with myself. Mm-hmm.
Well, in closing, I know it's a local group, or can people join online, but how does someone get involved with your project?
Thank you for asking that one. Yeah. It's go to cominghomehaunted.com. coming-home-haunted.org. You can probably get it on Google by Coming Home Haunted.
Mm-hmm.
There's a website kind of explains what the whole thing is. We've been talking about it. And then if you want to, there's like more information, that button. If you want to get more information, or, what can I do? Whatever it might be, hit the button, write down, whatever it is that they want. I'll get back to you.
Okay.
But it's Coming Home Haunted, and should be pretty memorable.
Yeah. Well, we'll put the website in the description as always. But one way I've been closing the show recently, not always, but I feel like this is a good place to do it. If there's someone struggling watching the show, and you could leave them with just a couple words to give them some hope, what would you say?
You're going to be okay. You're going to be all right. You're not alone. You're going to be all right.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would say find others that are in the same boat. Open your eyes and look around.
And talk to people. Before we go, there was that other, we can be doing this all day, but there was a guy who had some real problems, and they were legit. They were high-level issues, high-level problems. Recently married, his wife, how was your day, dear? I don't want to talk about it, that kind of a thing. And when we got some of the older vets together with him, with this younger, everyone's younger than me, but, with this younger guy, one of the comments that was made is that she's not your girlfriend. She's not your roommate. You have a very specific relationship with that woman, and that relationship is your wife. Very, very specific. And what you may need to do, find the right time, is to apologize to her and say, when I have told you I didn't want to talk with you, my heart was I wanted to protect you. But I was disrespectful to you as my wife. There are things that you, and maybe only you, need to hear. I need to be safe with you, and I need to tell you the truth. And if you don't do that with the people who love you, nothing will get better. But you have to be brave enough to tell the truth to people and hope. You just need to be brave enough to tell the truth to the people who love you. Mm-hmm. The veteran thing is, maybe that's the place to start, is with some brothers.
Mm-hmm. Those closest to you, wives, husbands, kids, they got to know.
Maybe not your kids, but your wife or your husband. There's almost a duty that you have to be honest with that person about who you are, and to not do that is disrespectful to that person. Not so much the person, but disrespectful to the husband-wife person. And that values that adds value, truthful value to the relationship of a husband and a wife. And I think sometimes they get all mixed up thinking that, we're roommates, we're friends.
Yeah.
That's one way of looking at it.
Yeah. They're teammates. You got to be honest on your team.
And that's true. That's true. But man, your spouse deserves candor, deserves. And once you go past that line, you go, God, that was easy.
Yeah.
Still with me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I got to say thank you so much for this. Thank you for this, the privilege of talking with you. I'm really glad to have met you. Mm-hmm. And then, the privilege of being able to talk to some other vets. And if there's something that you want to, Coming Home Haunted, click on, get back to me. Mm-hmm. And I'll get back to you.
Yeah. Like I said, I'll put it in the show notes for sure. But Jay, so much respect for you, your career. I know you have had a very successful business career too, which we didn't even touch on, but you're a man of experience and wisdom. And, I hope today's episode, I know I learned a lot. So I hope some people were able to reflect and learn a little bit as well.
I learned a lot today too. Thank you very much.
Well, it's an honor knowing you, Jay. I appreciate you coming on the show.